So I'm back. I think you guys will remember this setup from last time. I have the Retrobit card. That's the little blue thing. Of course, there's this classic cartridge, Super Mario Duck Hunt. Now I have, okay, this is the Teensy. That's the microcontroller that I'm using to manipulate those chips here on the far right. And this thing is new, and I'll kind of explain. So you remember last time my experiment wasn't successful. What I wanted to do was basically simulate the select button, and what I was expecting the cursor to switch from selecting between Mario and Duck Hunt type thing, like back and forth type thing. But again, it was not successful. So I struggled a bit, and the breakthrough wasn't just sort of one thing, but there was sort of three things that I was doing wrong. So the first thing is, in my code, I forgot to set the direction of the data bits on this microcontroller. Up until then, it was changing the outputs, but I think it was just sort of really weak because of internal pull-up resistors type thing. And then the next thing was, in order to load the joystick value into the shift registers, required a clock. And I knew from looking at the literature that the lockout chip, which actually is included, it's this little guy here, sort of the small guy to the left of the four other chips. Anyway, that thing is supposed to utilize a clock, but the clock actually I think is contained probably on the Super Nintendo itself, which of course we don't have here. So that brings us to this thing here. Basically, I wired this thing up in order to provide a clock for the circuit. Okay, so that was the number two thing. And then the number three thing, when I was reading the joystick control, I thought select was represented by the fifth bit being set, but it sort of depends if these shift registers shift left or right, so there's still a little bit of confusion there. So what I tried just a few moments ago was, instead of setting the fifth bit, I set the third bit, which, if you start at bit 8 or bit 7 and work your way down to 0, bit 3 ends up being the fifth bit in the opposite direction type thing. So anyway, enough talking, I guess. I'm going to show you now what happens when I apply power to this. Okay, so here's my screen, and power I'm going to apply using USB. Alright. Okay. So look at that. That is what I wanted to achieve before. Roughly every second I simulate the select command on the joystick. And initially, the other thing I do too is I kind of wait a few seconds to let this screen scroll in. Earlier I was issuing commands too soon and it was interrupting that. But watch how nicely this thing slides. And then once that delay is over, after 3 seconds or so, or 4 seconds, I basically loop back and forth, pressing select. So yeah, I was kind of pleased with this for once.